Hey guys, welcome back to some more BTD6, where today we're going to be counting down the top 5 abilities in the game. So the way I plan to rank these abilities is based on, well, obviously their price, their strength, and most importantly, how practical they are to use in a real game. So we're talking like Chimps mode and Pop mode, on like easy, medium, hard, advanced maps. So as a quick example, the 050 Super Monkey, aka the Anti-Bloon, while it's probably one of the strongest abilities in the game, I can tell you it won't make this list because, well, it's not practical to use based on its price. And of course, you're never going to be able to save up all that money unless you're going epic late game. And one more thing, this is all based on my opinion, so I expect people will disagree with this list in some way, but I will try to explain exactly my thought process behind ranking all these abilities, so hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. Now, let's begin. At number 5, we have the First Strike, which, I'll be honest, only makes this list because of one specific round. And to nobody's surprise, that is round 100. A lot of the time, this is the best way to deal with the last round on Chimp/Popple, just because of how much damage it deals to single target balloons like the Bad. It takes out about 3/5 of the Bad's health, which is more than enough, which even though you can only use it once during the round, because the cooldown's pretty long, a lot of the time that's really all you need, because your defense should be able to handle the last 40%. Yeah, this is especially useful for really short maps where obviously your defense has a lot less time to take out all 28,000 of its health if you don't use the First Strike, because you can't slow it down, you can't stun it. The only thing you could do to it is lots and lots of damage. Now there's another ability out there that you may argue is just about as good, if not even better, than the First Strike against round 100, and that's the Mob Eliminator. So you could argue that that ability could take over the First Strike at the number 5 spot, but do keep in mind that the Eliminator is 2 times as expensive, so already that's enough to take the First Strike over it, and even though the cooldown's really short on it, it still takes about 4 uses of the ability to break even. So 4 uses is probably as much as you're gonna get on a short map, but yeah, I still stand by that notion that it's a little overkill. You don't need that much damage to take care of around 100. One First Strike ability is really all that's necessary, assuming your defense is good enough for the last 40%. But aside from round 100, the First Strike still has some uses on rounds outside of it, such as DDT rounds. Now obviously it's not flawless versus DDTs, it only targets a small area of the track, so at most, on rounds like 95, 93, 99, you're going to be popping around 2 to 3 DDTs per ability usage. A little bit better on maps where the track overlaps. So yeah, a little bit of bonus points there too, assuming you do get the First Strike before round 100. But again, the First Strike really only makes the list because of that one round. And that's kind of a testament to, well, how bad abilities are in this game. Because when I was thinking about this top 5 list, I was like, damn, I really don't use very many abilities in my Chimps runs. Or at least not a whole wide variety of them. So crafting out this top 5 was pretty hard. But anyways, we'll move on to number 4 now. And at number 4 we have Spike Storm. 240 Spike Factory. Now I really don't use this ability very much, but I'd say it's kind of underrated. And it's also not that expensive as well. Costs about 10k total for the 240, and it deals with DT rounds pretty flawlessly, namely 93 in this scenario. Of course, that's not the only thing you can use a Spike Storm on. You can also use it versus the Blimps, which is pretty good if you have towers that can deal with the Super Surrounds inside. Now I will say it isn't flawless against all DT rounds, like for example 95. The spikes may get eaten up by the mobs underneath the DTs on this round, for example. But realistically, you will have something else that'll deal with the mobs underneath, like the Shatter Shells, along with your other defense for the 90s. So this ammo access does make it look a lot worse than it would be realistically. So yeah, it's also kind of like a really poor man's First Strike for round 100 as well. Depending on the map, for every time you use a Spike Storm on round 100, you're gonna take out about 3 to 4,000 of the Bad's health, which isn't too shabby considering, well, its price and the fact that it does excel in ways that the First Strike doesn't. And bonus points too, because I'd say Spike Storm is even better on short maps, because if you see in this test over here, the Spike Storm always sets out the same amount of spikes, no matter what length the map is. So for example, on Peninsula, you see the Spike Storm eats up about 11,000 RBE worth of balloons, and on a longer map you'll see it does the exact same thing. Which in my opinion, the more clumped the spike piles are, the less chance of them going to waste. That's why I do think kind of highly of this Spike Storm, even though it's not something I use in every single game. Again, most abilities are pretty bad in this game, so for that reason, we have Spike Storm at number 4. Now for number 3, these ones should be a little more clear-cut, aka less controversial. And at number 3, we have the Maelstrom. I will say that the top 3 here are really close together. It's kind of hard to decide. You could probably interchange all 3 if you'd like. Now this guy should be a no-brainer. It does everything you want it to, aka beats round 63, beats round 76, beats round 78, all for a very low cost of like 3,000 bucks. Now when I say it beats 63, 76, and 78, timing and positioning still matters a lot, because sometimes if you mistime your ability, you'll see that a lot of balloons still leak from those clumped ceramic rushes. So one thing I noticed here when testing the Maelstrom, it actually helps to have your Maelstrom against the grain versus with the grain. So if you recall, this was a pretty big debate back when people were using boomerangs back in battles in BTD5. However, the Glaive Lord doesn't have that issue in this game, but surprisingly the Maelstrom does. Because if you see here, if we move our Maelstrom to the right side versus on the left side, you'll see how much of a difference that makes if we use the ability at the same time. Like, it literally took out every single layer off of every ceramic, left almost nothing behind. Whereas if you saw it with the grain, it'll still leak in some pinks, yellows, etc. So yeah, just wanted to point that out in case you were uninformed, but as for why Maelstrom takes number 3, well, it does exactly what you expect it to. The only issue is that, well, it does fall off once Super Cerams come into play. Even if it's against the grain, the Maelstrom doesn't do enough damage to Super Cerams, and that's kind of an issue with a lot of towers / abilities. But it hurts the most against the Maelstrom because Maelstrom blades have infinite pierce, and since the Super Cerams are combining a lot of balloons into very few balloons, yeah, the Maelstrom does almost nothing, sadly. But what do you expect? It's only 3,000 bucks again. It really should be used more as a mid-game tower versus a late-game one. But even then, I feel like you could still use it somewhat for the late game. Like, surprisingly, I found out if you add an Alchemist on top, which does affect the blades on the Maelstrom, FYI, it actually makes the Maelstrom do so much more damage versus the Super Cerams, and just in general, thanks to like the +1 layer that the Alchemist gives it. Granted, I'm not sure how practical this is, because the Alchemist itself is more expensive than the Maelstrom. But regardless, I think Maelstrom at number 3 is fairly reasonable placement for it. And now let's go to the top 2, which is only marginally better than the Maelstrom in my opinion. And yes, at number 2 we have the Bloon Sabotage from the Ninja. I'm sure everybody expected this to be on the list somewhere, but I have it number 2. And there's really not much explaining that needs to be done on the Sabo. If you don't know what the Sabo does, then you definitely do not play this game. But it basically slows down balloons by 50% for 15 seconds. This applies to every balloon when the ability is activated, as well as the new balloons that come in, aka it's extremely essential on rounds like 99, 95, basically all DDT rounds. Giving your towers twice as much time to pop those fast DDTs is extremely crucial to say the least, and just on other rounds in general like 98. But the only reason this ability is not at number 1 is for the sole reason that it doesn't affect balloons that get popped after the Sabo is activated. So back in battles, basically this ability would slow every single balloon for 15 seconds, even children of balloons that get popped. So basically what I mean is, if you got some Moabs coming through, you activate the Sabo, and then you pop the Moab, the ceramics are not half speed, they are full speed, which obviously makes this ability not as good as it once was in the previous game. I'm not sure if Ninja Kiwi intended for this to be the case, but I don't know. Maybe they thought the Sabo was too broken if they allowed it to be half speed for an entire 15 seconds on every single balloon. Granted, it still costs the same amount as in battles, basically. 5,400 bucks for the ability itself, and about 7k for the tower in total. So even with that huge nerf to it, it's still a fairly reasonable price for a pretty strong ability that helps for basically any round except round 100. Well, actually, it could kind of help on round 100 if you use it for the DDTs and the Zoom Gs. But yeah, that was basically the sole reason the Sabo is not number 1 on this list. Instead of number 1, we have the Ground Zero. Okay, I'm not sure if everybody agrees with me here, but again, the top 3 is really close. Maelstrom, Sabo, and Ground Zero are probably just as useful in this game, but I'd say the Ground Zero marginally sneaks ahead of the others. Just for the sole reason that, well, it does exactly what you expect it to. Damages every balloon on the screen, does 700 damage, FYI. So it's basically an insta-kill for any DDT, any Moab, any very damaged BFB. So you can basically find a use for this in almost any late game situation. All for a low cost of like 14,000 bucks too. Basically around 17,000 total for the entire 040 ace. Pretty reasonable price for what you get out of the ability. But the reason why I have this tower / ability number 1 is because it deals with pretty much everything a defense struggles with late game, aka Super Cerams. Because as long as you have towers that can deal with, well, the blimp HP, if you just get all the balloons low enough in health, you can just ignore all the Super Cerams in general. Use the ground zero, basically everything's taken care of. Now obviously it's a little bit easier said than done. The ZMGs generally take a lot longer to take down than the BFBs. Like for example 98. So oftentimes, what's really gonna happen in reality is you're gonna have to use the ability a lot earlier than you'd like to, aka it won't insta-kill everything on the map. But even that still takes a huge weight off your shoulders. Like just for example, this defense. I know it's monkey lane, but just bear with me here. You can basically run the scenario the same way in many other maps, including advanced ones. But oftentimes just one ground zero is all you need on 98, and that'll take care of the worst part of the round. Most of the time just leaving you with a couple BFBs to take care of, which your defense should be able to handle. But yeah, it's not just around 98 as well. 99 could also be a pretty useful help for it, even though it does have a long cooldown, so you gotta pick and choose what round you're gonna use it on. It doesn't fully insta-kill fortified DTs on 99, but takes it down low enough so that the rest of your towers could deal with it. Hell, even useful for the last round too. Did I mention you could also use it on Ouch Chimps? So yeah, that's my top 5 picks for the best abilities in the game. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Well, leave your walls of text down below in the comments. I'll be eager to see what you guys have to say about this list. Again, this list was mostly based on usability of these abilities on like hard game modes like Chimps and Pablo. So if you're gonna argue that a certain tier 5 tower like a Sarbama should also make this list because it's a way better ground zero, well, think about the last time you used a Sarbama in a difficult game mode. Like there's a lot of strong tier 5 abilities, but sadly their price really isn't worth it. Because I basically don't see any tier 5 ability being used in any hard game modes. Except for the Mob Eliminator, but even then, that was explained earlier on. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say so far. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back for more BTD6 on the way coming soon, so make sure to subscribe, like, and all that. And I'll see you guys in the next video.